What do we expect from Aaron Rodgers this offseason with his big decision for staying with the Packers, retiring, or going to another team? It's time to break it all down right here, the potential fantasy football fallout on Locked On Fantasy Football to close another week.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Come to the site now and check out all the good stuff we have here leading you into the NFL offseason. So speaking of the NFL offseason, we have a big thing going on. We know here it's Aaron Rodgers. What the heck is he going to do? What is he thinking? Where does he want to play? Is it going to be Green Bay? Is it elsewhere here in 2022? Let's break it all down for you on today's show. So good way to close the week. We did look at our draft prospect rankings there at the skill positions, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. So we're doing a little bit of a special episode going into the weekend, knowing that the decision for Aaron Rodgers, whether it's just to do what he's been doing and playing Green Bay and put up big numbers, or change it up here and go away from the game completely, or find a new team and start working on his numbers there at the end of his career at age 38. So we'll break that all down for you. I have an article in depth at sportingnews.com. So a spinoff of that from a fantasy football perspective for you. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. All right, the first segment we'll do is look at Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and what's facing the Packers here. What are the upsides there? Aaron Rodgers, we know, solid QB1 the last 2 years, good value. He's outproduced his ranking for sure last 2 years because we saw that first year we're saying, okay, Matt LaFleur's offense is run heavy. Where are the numbers from Aaron Rodgers? What does he do? He responds with back-to-back MVP seasons here and putting up great numbers here. So Aaron Rodgers, we want the status quo. That's the best case scenario here for Rodgers' numbers. We know it. It's consistent, and it's easy to predict, and that's what we want with fantasy football. Some scenarios that we are looking at that are not too complicated. So looking at that for sure here with Aaron Rodgers. Now, let's look at the Packers and what they can offer him. Davante Adams is a free agent, but they're expected to franchise tag him or sign him to a long-term deal here. Should break the bank. He's in his prime right now, locked in with Rodgers. I think it's a package deal. I think Davante Adams wants to play with Rodgers because it obviously boosts his stock there as a top wide receiver to have that level of quarterback. So looking at Davante Adams, he's going to stay. They're making some moves right now. They restructured Aaron Jones' contract, probably going to say goodbye to Zadarius Smith, as they've got some young people on defense ready to take over and help that edge pass rush. So they're working on it. I think what's interesting is beyond Adams, what do they do at wide receiver? Allen Lazard is a restricted free agent. I think he'll be back because he can play the slot. We'll see about Randall Cobb. Do they bring him back for another year? Because Aaron Rodgers likes him and he's a good friend. We know that famous picture there where they saved a spot for him when he missed the Chiefs game with COVID-19 here this season. That was one of his favorite pictures he shared there, that cryptic Instagram post with Cobb and Adams and him not there in the middle of those two guys. So I think he'll lobby to have Cobb back as a slot receiver. So that could hurt the value of Allen Lazard, but worst, he becomes a fourth option on this team. Don't forget about Robert Tonyan. He was down for the season with his knee injury. He should come back here and be at a high level as another key target. We know that he had double-digit touchdowns just a couple years ago in his breakout season. Not a lot of high volume from Robert Tonyan there, but still a very key red zone target for Aaron Rodgers. And we know that A.J. Dillon has kind of expanded his game to be a better receiver to complement Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, however, is a free agent, so that's something they're going to have to look at here. They're very inconsistent with the deep threat opposite Adams, and I think that would be a way to get Rodgers' value boosted here. That he's a big arm quarterback, buys time, shuffles his feet well, avoids the pass rush, has good mobility. We know that as well. So Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been okay. He's been flashy in fantasy football, but it's time to upgrade there and look at different wide receivers that can help them. So in the draft, there's some options here. You got Drake London of USC, should be around in the late round range, or late first round range, I should say. Jahan Dotson, there at Penn State, a vertical deep threat. Traylon Burks, does he slip from Arkansas? There's a lot of guys that you can look at. Right now, as we mentioned in my draft breakdown here, my top 3 wide receivers are Jamison Williams of Alabama, even with that ACL coming back. Then take your pick between Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson of Ohio State. They're pretty close for me. But then it opens it up to London and Burks and Dotson. Very good wide receiver class here. And then you get a little into the next round. You got David Bell at Purdue that I mentioned that I liked a lot here. Going later in the draft, Wan'Dale Robinson, a very fast player as well from Kentucky. Same school that produced Randall Cobb for the Packers. So a lot of things to look at here with Aaron Rodgers, but Green Bay can actually be his best spot here. The offensive line, we'll see about David Bakhtiari getting a little bit older. We know he had battled the knee injury all last year. They also had some injuries to Elgin Jenkins and Billy Turner. So that offensive line should be better as well for the Packers with better health here from their veterans. Again, the weapons are looking pretty good, especially if Tunyon can return and be pretty effective here. If they can upgrade from MVS, whether they're looking in free agency, I doubt they would do that here. They're in a tough situation. Getting Adams under contract and that $19 million franchise tag value is going to be tough enough here. So I think it's a very good chance that the Packers finally come through and draft Rodgers another weapon here that isn't that mess from a few years ago. We know what happened there with that group, Alan Lazard and Ekwekanemi St. Brown and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and they said long goodbye to Jamon Moore a long time ago. That's a name blast from the past there that the Packers stashed there as receivers. Didn't really pan out all that much. Lazard was a bit of a revelation and surprise here from Iowa State and kind of settled in there. So a lot of good value there in the draft. I think they're going to commit to Rodgers more. If he comes back here after these 2 weird off seasons of will he or won't he, I think the Packers, Brian Gutekunst, he has no plans right now to trade him. I think they're going to do everything they can to keep upgrading around Aaron Rodgers. So I'm excited to see what the Packers do, but that's what we want. We want Aaron Rodgers to stay put in Green Bay because that's where his best value is. And I think he's a lock for a top 5 quarterback. We have some other guys there, that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Joe Burrow on the rise here. The runners, Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and those guys that give you some decent production on the ground there to boost their values. But right in that range in the top 5, Aaron Rodgers can land here. And we know the numbers are big just by throwing the ball here. And this Green Bay offense is kind of in a groove here. They did lose Nathaniel Hackett, the offense coordinator. He became the head coach of the Broncos. We'll get into that. And the potential of Aaron Rodgers reuniting with him and the old tight ends coach, Justin Otten, there in Denver. But looking at Green Bay, if you have a question about where Aaron Rodgers' best fantasy football value is in 2022, you're looking at it. It's in Green Bay with the Packers situation. So looking forward to seeing what he does, and we just want him to get it done. We don't want him to go on the Pat McAfee show and just tell us a little bit about his Punch Karma cleanse or his breakup and how he still feels about his former fiance. We want to know where's he going to play here in 2022 so we can move on, not only in reality football, but in fantasy football as well. So we'll get a decision soon are the indications here. It is the end of football season here for this year, but it'll come back soon enough. You do have USFL, so you can check out that action as well. But basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. We know the All-Star break is over in the NBA, so we're headed toward the playoff push here and the play-in tournament and all that good stuff. And you have the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournaments just around the corner in March for college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action only at BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, it's time to continue the show, and now we'll get into the fun part. We'll speculate how Aaron Rodgers would fare on these particular teams here if he was there. We'll do 5 teams in this first segment. second segment of our show, but our first segment looking at the teams. And I'll do 3 other kind of fringe suitors there, but these are the 5 primary suitors. One is actually more weighted than the others. Number 1, for sure, we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth, but 4 more teams. We'll look at 3 more teams, and then we'll assess what happens in the unlikely event that Rodgers has played his last season in the NFL, winning back-to-back MVPs at age 38. So we'll do that in our final segment. I do have to tell you, you got to check out all the ways we're bringing our show to you here. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes, just like this show. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. So check us out on YouTube all around here. We're on YouTube. We're wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over the place. The Locked On Network all off-season long. Okay. All right. So here are the teams that are on the list here. And we're going down a little bit tied in with the Vegas betting odds on where his next team will be offshore as well. Denver Broncos are the team that by far comes in the highest number 2 option behind the Packers here. And we know why. It's got Nathaniel Hackett in Denver. It's got Justin Outen, and he coached the tight ends and a very close friend of Rodgers as well. So Outen and Hackett over there. So they've been circling the wagons, settling up the waters. They're tired of Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. They made this offensive-minded hire with the intention of upgrading a quarterback. So everything is in place there to make a Rodgers run for sure. And this team has done it before. With Peyton Manning, we know how successful that turned out. They had a big record-breaking season with Manning. Then later, with a big-time defense, they were able to win the Super Bowl as Manning was a draw to play with. So looking forward to what Denver could do, and that would immediately boost all these targets. Remember how Cortland Sutton and Noah Fant actually finished as tight end 1, but Jerry Jeudy in particular, Tim Patrick had some flashes there, but we know they gave Sutton and Patrick some decent contracts here for 2022 and beyond. Jerry Jeudy still on his rookie deal here. It's been underachieving so far. Part of it is not being totally healthy. Part of it is having the questionable quarterback situation between Locke and Bridgewater here, but there's some untapped potential for sure. You have a classic number 1. You have a classic versatile guy that can play in the slot there, Jeudy. So Sutton and Jeudy. And then you have Tim Patrick, a very solid number 2 here that Denver really likes, and they've kept him around here. So good weapons there. Fant is an exceptional tight end, a good move tight end, has some field stretching ability. Talk to him there, and he's excited because it's Outen being the offense coordinator. He's a tight ends coach. You know he's going to feature Fant a little bit more. So immediate bump up to all these guys. Fant would be a really appealing tight end 1. You have Cortland Sutton would maybe get in the conversation back to be a wide receiver 1. Jerry Jeudy is a wide receiver 2. Tim Patrick is wide receiver 3. So similar impact to what we saw with the Bengals once they had Joe Burrow in place with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. That could be a similar effect with Rodgers coming over Denver. Don't forget about this aspect as well. Remember, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon have become massive fantasy football factors with their running. Jones has been an RB1 for a while, but Dillon has burst on the scene as an RB2, how effective they can run the ball. We know they have Garrett Bowles, very good left tackle in Denver. So when you're looking at that scenario, I mean, Rodgers is in excellent shape there should he go to the Broncos. It's a pretty well-rounded team waiting for the quarterback, but Javonte Williams is the guy that we're going to watch here because no Melvin Gordon. There's a possibility of that here in 2022, and Gordon is a free agent. So I don't know why they would keep Gordon, I guess, as a complimentary older power back, but they might as well move on here. The Broncos do have a lot of salary cap space. They do have a lot of draft picks with a lot of trades they made, including the Von Miller deal with the Rams. So they have some flexibility there, but I have no idea why they would keep Melvin Gordon here in the new offense. I think maybe Nathaniel Hackett could try to recreate the Jones-Dillon combination, but why? I think Williams can be what Aaron Jones is, just a special all-around back, explosive. We know he's pretty good in the passing game as well. So let's move on with Javonte Williams, and he could have a big, big year, having that balancing explosiveness of the passing game where all the attention isn't on Williams and stuff in the run with a legitimate quarterback there that is going to scare defenses on the back end. All right, the Broncos are by far the heavy favorite, so to speak, if Aaron Rodgers does not play for the Packers in 2022. The 49ers keep coming up it's strange. Everyone wants to dump on Trey Lance. We haven't even seen Trey Lance get a full audition here, and he played pretty well last year when Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. There's also speculation that the 49ers are going to somehow get Tom Brady out of retirement. They might stick with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a lot here, but we know the 49ers will be an exceptional place for Aaron Rodgers. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, that running game. I think the numbers, however, might be curbed, where I think with the Broncos, they would open up their passing game, and Hackett knows Rodgers in that sense. The 49ers are still a running team at heart, whether they use traditional backs, such as Eli Mitchell, and they give him a shot in year 2 to be the feature guy, to use Trey Sermon, or we know the super hybrid Deebo Samuel. They're still a running team there with Kyle Shanahan, for the most part, open things up in the passing game. So I think it's a long shot anyway. There's no way the 49ers would have traded up and invested a first-round pick in Lance and also have Garoppolo as an option, put them on the brink of getting to another Super Bowl, and try to make a really reckless deal for Aaron Rodgers, where I don't think he upgrades that team that much, which is really strange. I mean, Denver, obviously, a massive upgrade should they get Rodgers at quarterback, but the 49ers are one of those teams, they just have such a superior system here that they can lift the quarterback and get their offensive skill players to produce. Now, would we like it for those guys, Samuel, Kittle, and Ayuk? Of course we would. But the thing overall with Rodgers, the numbers would be curbed because the 49ers are also a complete team with a very strong defense led by Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. So the Broncos, I think, are going through some defensive changes without Von Miller. Their secondary could be different. Vic Fangio's gone, traded for Ed Donatel here. Their linebacker core could be a question mark. So that's the thing. When you look at the game scripts and the type of offense, the 49ers are not necessarily the best place for Aaron Rodgers to put up big numbers here in 2022. It's funny, but that's how their offense is kind of structured there. And again, it's all about, can you get the volume? Can you get the weapons and the volume? And just get enough touchdowns here and make sure you're throwing for more than 4,000 yards. The Broncos certainly allow for a higher ceiling of numbers than the 49ers. The Colts also are a team that in reality would be really good with Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know if that's his best value because they got to find their number 2 receiver now. T.Y. Hilton is a free agent. He's getting older. Michael Pittman Jr. would really benefit. He would be a wide receiver 1. He could be the new Devontae Adams here in this situation, which is very interesting because of his skill set there from USC, kind of same size receiver, good target in the red zone. So Michael Pittman Jr. would really benefit from Aaron Rodgers, and he would be the new Devontae Adams for sure. And we would go all in and try to draft him for sure. Then Jonathan Taylor, he's going to keep rolling there. That Wisconsin connection there between guy coming from Green Bay at quarterback and your whiskey running back, the former Badger, Jonathan Taylor. So that would be somewhat exceptional there if you got those two together, Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Rodgers. But again, pretty good defense in Indianapolis with DeForest Buckner and the rest of that crew. You've got, again, Taylor in the running game with Frank Reich. But, Frank Reich would open things up here for the offense for sure with Rodgers in there. Just finding those right weapons who are not as established. Like, where do you go that you feel great about? Zach Pascal, Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox. There's no Hilton in the mix. I mean, we've seen Paris Campbell not being able to stay healthy. So it's not the best situation for Rodgers. I think for the Colts perspective, they've become a very good winning team there with Rodgers, but the numbers are not conducive to be put up. The only upside there is having to play in the AFC South where you get the Jaguars, Titans, and Texans. Yeah, those are some nice, beautiful numbers that Aaron Rodgers can rack up there. So we'll see if that plays out. The Steelers, that's another team where I think pretty good value overall because you look at them, they're going to have to depend more on the passing game. Their run blocking is questionable for Najee Harris. You figure they're going to upgrade their offensive line in some way, but look at the weapons he gets. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster comes back on a cheap deal. And if Rodgers in the mix, Juju will suddenly take a deal, I think, to come back. So if Smith-Schuster can be there with those two guys, Johnson and Claypool, and Pat Freiermuth at tight end, and what Najee Harris can do as receiver, upgrade for all those guys across the board. Johnson is pretty good, but he can even be better here as a go-to guy for Rodgers. And Rodgers in a pretty good spot as well because this is a team, again, as much as they like to run the ball and be more effective there for Mike Tomlin, they're at their best when they throw the ball. And remember, Ben Roethlisberger put up some pretty good passing numbers despite his arm limitations there. And Rodgers doesn't have those as an older quarterback at age 38. So a lot of things to look at there. But the Steelers would be definitely appealing all-around fit. Upgrade everyone, upgrade Rodgers. It would be a fantastic situation if that occurred. And if Aaron Rodgers is on the Steelers, folks, with a few offensive line upgrades and get some health in the run defense, Steelers are going to look good as a Super Bowl team. I don't care if we're the back end of the playoffs here the past 2 years, and they've got to navigate through the Bengals, who just got to the Super Bowl, and the Ravens, and we know the Chiefs and Bills and all those powers in the AFC. The Steelers will look pretty darn good reality and fantasy football-wise with Rodgers in uniform wearing number 12. They're not going to wear 12, but in our minds he will, with Terry Bradshaw and channeling that a little bit. So it'd be great to see that there for Pittsburgh overall. Last team, Tampa. This would also be a great fit, obviously, for Brady. It was a great fit for Brady. It's going to be an awesome fit for Rodgers with the arm strength and the quarterback-friendly system of Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich. So that would be awesome. I mean, just would be good. We know Tom Brady finished there. That's where you're going to get Rodgers, probably with his numbers here with Mike Evans. Presumably they'll find a way to bring Chris Godwin back, just like the Packers will tag Devontae Adams. I think Godwin being tagged last year, good chance he'll get a long-term contract. We know they've got some other receivers here, Tyler Johnson and Jalen Darden and Scotty Miller. Even without Antonio Brown there, they're appealing. But yeah, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, you figure out the rest. Maybe Rashad Perriman stays in the mix again after he went to the Jets and circled back here. You also look at the potential of Rob Gronkowski maybe wanting to play and stay there with Tampa Bay if they bring Rodgers from Green Bay. He's a free agent, but I think he'll come back in a cheaper deal. O.J. Howard is a free agent, so they'll have to address that a little bit, but it's a very good situation for Rodgers as well. The Steelers and Buccaneers really stand out a lot more than the 49ers and Colts, and I think the Broncos fall somewhere in between with the fantasy football value for Rodgers and his newer weapons here, if that would come to fruition in 2022. We'll talk about 3 more long shot teams in our final segment, as well as look at what Jordan Love could do if Aaron Rodgers just leaves the NFL and gives Love the starting job. So we'll talk about that here. That's also an implication of fantasy football related to Aaron Rodgers' decision. This is the time of the year that I usually give up on my decision to stick to my New Year's resolutions, but this year I'm sticking to it, to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built's most delicious bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie. So good. These are going to be some of your new favorites at Built Bar. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, 100% real chocolate, Puffs included. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Check out what most Built Bars contain here. 130 calories, only 4 grams sugar, only 4 grams net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So many good flavors there. Mint brownie, coconut almond, coconut. And now white chocolate, cookies and cream. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time at Built Bar. If they find a flavor that might be good, they'll make it work, and it'll be delicious, and it'll also be good for you. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it delicious every time, whether they're a bar or a puff. So you got to get in on Built Bar right now. All you have to do is go to Built.com. That's Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, it's time to wrap the show here, looking at a few more Aaron Rodgers suitors. Then we'll get into our Jordan Love take here. And don't forget about Jordan Love. He might be pushed in a big role if Aaron Rodgers retires or goes to another team. And that could be where the Packers have to go quarterback with their first-round pick from a couple years ago, as Rodgers has won MVP in those 2 seasons for Jordan Love. The Raiders are in the mix for sure. I mean, if you remember that Tom Brady once had that quote about if Aaron Rodgers was playing the Josh McDaniels offense, he'd be totally going off and be 10 times better than I am. So keep that in mind. Stash that nugget again. But there's also that comparison. Remember, people said that Derek Carr channels some of the qualities that Aaron Rodgers has. So bring it all together. Do the Raiders move on from Derek Carr? Now, Derek Carr is kind of that underappreciated quarterback. I fall into that camp as well. Like, he probably changes my opinion a little bit with his fantasy football disappointment. Just when you think you've got him figured out, that's when he's not all that effective, and then it goes the other way around with him. So I think that's part of my frustration playing out. But in terms of reality quarterback, you could do a lot worse than Derek Carr. And remember, the Raiders did make the playoffs with him at the helm, and that was despite not having a lot of Darren Waller, Henry Ruggs III not being a factor either. So Derek Carr is underappreciated for sure, but I don't think he's that high ceiling quarterback the way that Aaron Rodgers is. He just hasn't simply shown that skill set. He's efficient, can push the ball downfield, but there's nothing real special or dynamic about Derek Carr. He's just a guy. He's in that middle of those guys who can be effective. Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill, that type of group, but not someone who's going to push you that far to the ceiling. We know that. And we would have seen it in the playoffs against the Bengals, who went on, beat the Raiders, got to the Super Bowl here. So don't sleep on Las Vegas. And it's a good destination here for Aaron Rodgers to kind of close out his career here out on the west side here. And again, alternative to the Broncos. I think the Broncos in the AFC West would still be the front runner despite having the presence of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Justin Herbert and the Chargers there. But the Raiders are on the radar just a little bit here as blips. So we're the Cleveland Browns. We'll see what they do with Baker Mayfield. I think they're on the fence here about replacing him. I don't love that situation at all for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I get it that they've got pretty good defense with Myles Garrett and some of the players they have there. Their offensive line is very good. We know that. They can run the ball with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But what are they going to do wide receiver? I mean, they got tight ends, but right now, with David Njoku being a free agent, they're down to Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant. Odell Beckham Jr. is long gone. You have Anthony Schwartz coming off an injury-riddled season. You got Rashard Higgins. He's a free agent. And you have Jarvis Landry wanting to get out of there. So I think Jarvis Landry would probably change his tune if Aaron Rodgers was in line to possibly replace Baker Mayfield. But overall, I think you just have to be cognizant of the fact that the Browns may not have as much appeal, especially trying to now chase down the three teams in the AFC North all of a sudden after they were looking like the best of the playoff teams just 2 years ago. And the Titans, this team I just have to address just because there was that rumor of Aaron Rodgers building this mansion in Nashville, but George Kittle and a lot of other players like moving there that have nothing to do with playing for the Titans. And why would he want to go to the Titans? I think, again, that puts him in a really tough spot. Like, the Titans would like him, but Ryan Tannehill, they're saying they're going to stick with him. But, again, they got to fix a lot of things. They got their running game. It's a run-heavy offense. It's not going to be good for fantasy. Julio Jones is a free agent. He was disappointing last year, so we're not sure what we're going to get from this passing game beyond A.J. Brown. So Titans, I don't think have a lot of appeal, just like the Browns for Rodgers. But Raiders could have a little bit alternative as a plan B if he wants to go to the AFC West and the Broncos don't work out as a potential destination based on their trade offers here for the Packers. All right, finally, let's talk about Jordan Love. I think this kid has good fantasy football upside. We didn't see it a lot. I mean, that was a tough spot. He played against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They kind of restrained him, made it like a battle of attrition and the weather and all that stuff. So Jordan Love we haven't seen, but he's in a good system. He had the influence of Hackett and Outten, and now there's still Matt LaFleur. Good running game. If they bring back Adams here, they're in a good spot here, but that's all dependent. They have to make sure things are up around Jordan Love. I think the key to his value is, will they let him loose and run a little bit if they start him? That's a big if. I think he has that potential, but maybe want to settle him into the pocket. He's not clearly as dynamic the way we think about Trey Lance and Justin Fields, the draft picks from last year in the first round. So Jordan Love, I think the jury's still out, but we know that we were questioning, what are we going to get from this Aaron Rodgers guy? He's sitting on the bench for a couple of years behind Brett Favre. Favre has been a pretty good fantasy football asset. What's Rodgers going to do? Then it didn't take long. Rodgers had 1 year there where I think a little bit underwhelming, but then he was breaking out and doing his thing here as a top-flight passer, and we have not looked back since with Aaron Rodgers' numbers. So keep that in mind. If you had some skepticism about Aaron Rodgers and you have some about Love, don't totally sleep on him. It's a very good system, LaFleur, and this offense, and a lot of weapons potentially there for Jordan Love to be a fantasy football asset in the short term. All right, there you have it. There's a breakdown of your Aaron Rodgers scenarios here. The three: stay with the Packers, go to another team, or retire, and the fantasy football potential implications of all that. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Don't forget that we will start continuing to look at the offseason here all throughout next week here. So we got the NFL Combine. We can set you up with that with the draft prospect ranking. So we'll keep bringing to advanced scouting on the hottest topics here in fantasy football. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with inside analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. Going to be a big deal, of course, next week with the Combine. That's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like this show, Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. This has been a look at the Aaron Rodgers scenarios here for the 2022 offseason. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the flip side.